Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
If you can do 90. Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, one of my favorite guests and one of my audience's favorite guests. His name is Dr. Hans Utter, last name spelled Utter. And I'll put a link to his website. He's definitely a multi-talented musician, but we've done shows on music for the masses. That was an 8-part series, and now this will be our 3rd part on a title of the show, which is a long title, but I think it covers a lot of the stuff that was happening during the Cold War, according with the Soviet Union. The full title is Advanced Soviet Research on Cybernetics, Biofield Energetics, and Cognitive Restructuring. So all those things working together. And we did our last show. We were talking about Bateson and Margaret Mead and this whole show about dance and trance in Bali, which is really something else that they study. But we were talking in the pre-show. Like, I remember Margaret Mead, and you'll see this if you're watching this live on X or Rockfin or YouTube, this picture of Margaret Mead. But when I was growing up, she was like an eminently quotable person. Like, she was seen as a woman's liberation kind of, positive female person. But there's a lot more to that story. So we can talk more about that. So, Dr. Hans Utter, welcome back to the show.
Hey, William. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. I mean, we kind of had to cut it short last time. I had family in town, and it just, unfortunately, I had to kind of should close it down at 60 minutes. But I have a lot more time today. Maybe you can kind of talk about where we were at last time and how you want to pick up the trail. Yeah.
Well, I'm right here. I'm at the 75% of the total eclipse tomorrow.
Nice.
Right there, right here in Ohio.
It'll be 100 years since Crowley channeled the Book of the Law to the
day, right? And then you've got the devil comet, the devil horn comet. You've got the NL-3 rockets launched by NASA. The serpent enemy of the sun god Ra. Basically, the enemy of life itself, right? So this is the sort of the pinnacle, and they're launching at 3:33. They're launching the rockets.
At so people who think these guys don't work with like numerology and classical references, that's all they do, right?
Yeah, and there's so many dates. The comet, you got all these Vulcan references. You've got the Nima, the Babylonian city. It's passing 3 cities in America on the path directly overhead. So there's so many references, but anyways, so Margaret Mead, really one of those people that, the first conference on cerebral inhibition, right? And which I believe we touched upon, but you have to see that there was a massive infiltration, okay, from Cambridge elites, from H.G. Wells, Fabian socialists, from, many different levels. So we can't really, the communist Russia, this was imposed on them, right? This was an imposition. Yes, it was fomented, but it also was funded externally. Okay. And so, in fact, Russia was our ally, right? For many, many years. And all the you look at the British white papers, you see the absolute slaughter that was going on there, right? Absolute slaughter. And you have the journalist, New York Times, eminent journalist, you know his name, right, William?
Which one? I don't know.
During the Russian Revolution.
Oh, was it Durant?
Durant, yes. Durant, completely lying about everything.
Right. Yeah, he was. Walter Durant, right? He was friends with Crowley too, actually, in New York.
Was he really?
Yeah. No, there's he was references. I'll see if I can find them.
Okay.
Yeah, but Walter Durant, I think is his name. Yeah.
He was friends with Crowley. Okay, that I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a connection between them. Let's see if I can find it. They were in New York at the same time. Oh, maybe it was Walter Duranty. It was Durant. Well, there's a Walter Durant and a Walter Duranty, but Walter Duranty is the guy. That's the guy who was the Moscow bureau chief that lied about everything, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah,
lied about the famine.
yeah, and it was like Durante, Durant, it's a sort of French.
Here's this is just from Wikipedia, but I'll go get my Crowley stuff. After completing his education, Durante moved to Paris, where he met Aleister Crowley and participated in magic rituals with him. Durante became involved in a relationship with Crowley's mistress, Jane Chiron, and eventually married her.
So that's not just a superficial connection. That's a very deep connection.
Yeah, in Magic Without Tears, Crowley terms Durante my old friend, and quotes from Durante's book "I Write as I Please." So it's his most famous book, And Durante wrote, for people who don't, Stalin's Apologist was his biography, which is true. He really was an apologist.
Well, he was also just, there was, when you read the actual white papers, and you look at people that went there that weren't biased, right? Because they brought people there on trips, even prominent figures, and there was mass slaughter going on, and we'll get into that a little bit later, in this, but so just to understand that, so we're looking at the whole cybernetics thing, because again, as I mentioned, was completely shut down on the surface of the United States and only continued in the Soviet Union. And oh God, look at his eyes, man. He seems kind of evil, man, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
I would not invite him home to see my daughter if I had a daughter. He's like, he looks
like he could be in Stalin's kind of entourage, like he could be his. I mean, he's dressed almost like a Stalinist, right? There he is.
Man, he even has that same gaze.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's wow. I mean, you have to really struggle to get that. And these are posed photographs. I mean, even pretty evil people can look nice in their photographs. But even there, he's like, yeah, the zombie. But really tremendous suffering. But you want to open up the thing I'm sharing real quick? I'll just
Sure.
Before I dive into history. So this is the woodpecker, as I mentioned. It started in 1976, and these are the frequencies that would be brought you here on shortwave. At the same time, there was electromagnetic fields being sent to the people in the U.S. Embassy in Russia. Many of them died, cancer, sicknesses, long before the Havana syndrome, right? So in the 70s. But the woodpecker was a signal, and it went all across the world. So do you see that?
Mm-hmm. I do.
So this actually, so we can see various interpretations, but there was use of microwave, energy, and also frequency. So it wasn't just a detection system, right? So you'll see a lot of stuff on Wikipedia. Oh, this was a sort of cover up. But so the noise, repetitive tapping noise, that's why it's called the woodpecker. And also like these strings of occasionally strings of numbers just being read, just odd things like that. But anyways, so, and they're showing the Chernobyl complex. So this was a frequency being broadcast on a planetary wide basis, right?
Right.
And if we see, I don't know if it says here is like 10 to 50 hertz I don't know if it's in this, but it's an ELF, right? So those tapping noises were just indicative of an ELF, extremely low frequency. Okay. So these are the frequencies the brain operates on. The ELF or infrasound. You have ultrasound, you have infrasound. So this is infrasound frequency. So I guess a lot of your listeners, these people I've recommended mostly listen on audio. So let me describe this. So the Russian woodpecker, we see here a picture of these radar arrays at the Chernobyl 2 complex. Now, of course, this, we talk about HARP, things like that, but this was the initial, broadcasting. So ELFs, right? Extremely low frequencies. They can travel tremendous distances, right? Elephants can communicate over hundreds of miles. Living trees can communicate using ELF
Wow.
frequencies. So, and this is the operating frequency of the human brain. Okay, so basically every frequency travels depending on the level of the frequency can travel a certain distance, right? So this is why, for example, well, another thing like say 5G is a very powerful high frequency. It can only travel a very short distance. That's why you have to have all these transmitters. Of course, 5G just meaning fifth generation, but it can only travel a certain distance because of that. It's a high frequency, but these low frequencies are these harmonic resonance things, again, they directly impact the brain. And this was a very early rollout of that. So Duga's radar. So I would Duga, kind of like Durga, right? The goddess, Hindu goddess. But so this, so look at this sculpture. You want to describe that, William? I mean, this just shows um, sort of that this inner looks like a human spinal network, right? So
Right.
I this is not what I believe, but it's based on what I'm saying of the interconnection between factions within the United States. We will get into that maybe a little bit deeper, but like Harry Dexter White, I mean, all these, the whole Roosevelt administration, it was totally rife, right? I mean, with infiltrators, with people that were sending military secrets, that the entire revolution was supported through the United States, through grain, through food, through aid, because they crashed the economy. They would not have survived. Okay, and we can go through. I don't want to turn people off, but McCarthy, he actually, everyone, he's all demonized. No, this was absolutely real. Okay. Massive infiltration. I mean, you have literally agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
In so many aspects: entertainment, media, military, State Department. Um, so, I think this is, so look at this phase array. So they're just saying in Chernobyl, I think there were multiple stations like this, not just the one at Chernobyl. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It happens to be at Chernobyl where they were doing an occult ritual at the time of the meltdown. Do you know about that?
No, I had
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
So that's quite
that's
interesting.
crazy. I'm not surprised.
So Duga, I'm going through this and people are listening. I can't see this. When the signals began in 1976, look at that. It's 13, right? You also have these dates are important, right? 7
Right.
6,
Right.
6 7. Because a lot of the, not to, some of these things like with the numerology, like launching rockets at 333 rockets, with all this stuff, right? It's going to
Right.
pass over 3 cities named Nema. The eclipse, and whether or not it may indeed be factually true, but a lot of times the numbers, there is a hidden numerology that's being, it's giving the signaling, right? So I mean, you just mentioned Durante is like an apostle of Crowley. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so
Married his mistress.
so this is not a, this is a very sort of superficial overview. But anyways, the woodpecker signal 7689 was the was a, it was a global frequency, or at least directed towards the United States, from
Wow.
Russia, that's hitting ELF, extremely
Mhm.
low frequencies. And the woodpecker, that's an artifact of the very low hertz signaling. And then you get into, they're also, China's doing something, with the ionosphere. during the eclipse, right? But this is all the same technology, and in a certain way, it's a united control grid, even though, it's a very complex mosaic. You can't say this one person is like this or that, but you can see from both sides of divides people working together or directing the overstructure.
Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah, go ahead.
We are live on Twitter. You can watch this on X. We got 44 people watching it on Twitter right now.
All right.
In addition to YouTube and everything else.
Well, I better touch up my appearance. But okay, well, let's we can go back to the slideshow, I guess, unless you want to say something.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just think the Durante-Crowley kind of Soviet research stuff overlapping is something else. I mean, he was the New York Times correspondent, covered up the Holodomor, which really kind of ties into Ukraine in a lot of ways. But they killed like 4 to 6 million people and just kept it quiet, minimized it.
You go back just one slide. It's just not much on there, but I'll just go through it. So Russia, is very unique culturally, and it had its own, part of the Byzantine Empire, basically.
Right.
It will go through the whole history, but they also had their own, indigenous culture, and they were, I talk about
Cyrillic, Saint Cyril. It's all Orthodox, right?
Well, but I'm talking even before that, right? So you have these sort of mystic tradition, and you have traditions of using sound healing within communities by the singing, by particular things. So I mean, actual use of sort of frequency, but also a connection with nature, with man, society, nature, and very distinct. Again, it's not completely outward looking or inward looking, but it's somewhere in between. And it's all the words, Slavic, right? Slavic slave. The word slave comes from Slav, right? The Russian, you look at the paintings of harems, you see a lot of blonde women there, right? And so these are the slaves. So, anyways, it's sort of it's almost like a crossroads, right, of possible developments in the planet as we see right now, right? We are living in this. The Cold War, by and large, was mostly for show. There was a lot of stuff going on, but it also was a mechanism, right? It was a mechanism to generate the fear of nuclear war. Think about that. You want to talk about PSYOP, duck and cover. I don't know if you're
right. I do. I'm old enough. I'm old enough to remember that.
Duck and cover, man. You're gonna go hide under your
under your desk like it's gonna save you, right?
It's gonna save you.
You want to talk about like a traumatic, traumatize the kids. Like duck and cover ain't gonna do you squat if you get hit.
Duck and cover. There's you probably find a video like on archive.org or somewhere. I get
some black and white video or something like that. Yeah,
it's not quite. Hopefully not that old, but duck and cover. But I mean, this was a residual. You went into the early 80s, whatever. This was still there. I mean, 80s was still Cold War, right? But duck and cover, that is giving you the sense that at any time, all life will be wiped out. Earth will be destroyed. This is not a small thing, right? This is not an actual threat, where you have bandits, you're in the middle of a war. You're living in the, Middle East. You're living in Ukraine. You don't need to scare people because the bombs are already dropping. This is where any moment the whole world can end.
Right.
And you're being conditioned as a little kid to duck and cover, right? This also is another impetus. We started talking about Darwinism, right? It's an impetus for a nihilistic worldview. We're all going to die. We're going to die anytime. So imagine that as an undercurrent, right? Even as an ELF, like extremely low frequency, that's going through the basic cultural substructure, that you're going to die in a nuclear war, and it could happen anytime. And it's, even if it's not happening, it's going to happen. Then you have what? AIDS. As soon as the Cold War winds down, you got AIDS. The whole AIDS thing. Are you familiar? Have you gotten into that at all?
The AIDS thing?
Yeah, it's like complete Peter Dusseldorf. Are you familiar with that at all?
Oh yeah, but it's supposedly all fake, right? I mean,
AIDS is yeah. It was created by, and I'm going on a tangent here, but it was created by primarily through taking amyl nitrate and having sex with 40, 50 people in a bathhouse.
yeah, on a weekend, dude. I mean, that's like a petri dish, dude. Like that's kind of stuff. I mean, I grew up in Northern California. I was in San Francisco, so all that stuff. I think it was the band played on was the famous kind of story. Like these people were engaged in really high risk behavior, man. Like it was like not good.
Well, the same company that made AZT also made amyl nitrate poppers.
All right, so they caused the problem and then made money off it. Is that
Yeah.
it?
Well, when you take amyl nitrate, which I've never taken, I don't know, not sure what it does to you. It's supposed to be, I guess it's very good for whatever, sex.
Like I think that's what the guy in Blue Velvet, right? Hopper was
Yeah.
juicing on amyl nitrate.
Yeah, but when you take it, it suspends your immune system, so your immune system is just turned off. Boom, it goes off. So,
right, so that's AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, right?
Yeah, but anyways, what I want to say is that the Cold War was replaced by the plague of AIDS. Anybody, you can die of AIDS, right? AIDS testing. This is what I want to say is this is like a spectrum of this fear, anyways. But in a certain way, even though Russia is implicated, but also it may be something out of this whole thing too. You know what I mean? Even the polarity. We'll see what's going to happen. So we can go to the next slide. But we're in the midst of this right now. Ukraine war. It's not like I don't have to make this up like a science fiction novel with our president. Our president Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Man. Oh wow, it's a great yeah,
I mean, we're in the weirdest situation. It feels like pre-World War I and II, where things just kind of get worse and worse and worse, and then it's the declaration of war,
Yeah. So so the first Russian state, this is I got two maps here for those just listening. The first Russian state was established in the late 1800s, centered in the city of Kiev, which is
right. So it's
so
the center of Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, so the Russian state basically, to say they're separate countries, you can understand this war. Now, obviously you've got, the Holodomor, where what is it, 60,000, 100,000, maybe, hundreds of thousands. I forget the exact numbers on the Holodomor. This was a engineered famine.
Yeah, well, no, it was millions. It was 5 or 6
It was
million.
millions. I'm sorry, 60 million. 60 million.
Yeah. 6. 5 or 6
million.
Yeah, okay. 6. Like Holocaust levels,
I forget the
it was a big number.
Yeah. How many people know about the Holodomor, but the all these numbers, right? I mean, they just become numbers. But the Holodomor was really beautiful. I mean, not beautiful. I'm sorry, beautiful. Really brutal. I mean, really. I mean, they would, they would take if you steal a piece of bread, you're brutally publicly executed. I mean, it was horrific.
Yeah.
Reducing people to cannibalism. I mean, it was a horrific thing. But anyways, that's why the Ukraine, there is bad blood between Russia and Ukraine. But of course, and then Russia, what was quote unquote Russia controlled by at the time, but Kievan Rus, which means that Rus or Rus that was the center of Russia. So you can go to the next slide.
Right. But also, like, that bad blood is reflected in a lot of Nazi sympathizers. Like, a lot of the Ukrainians joined up with the Nazis during World War II.
Yeah,
And
and well,
so,
they were the main, in the most recent uh, war, of course, some of the main, backbone of the fighting forces as they're just being sacrificed, ritually sacrificed. I mean, it was Kiev was very important for it was part of the Byzantine Empire. So the Byzantine Empire, which is another thing, one of the longest lasting empires of all time was the Byzantine Empire.
right. It literally was a 1,000-year empire, if not
1,000-year
longer.
empire. And many people don't even never heard. Did you hear about that in school, even in college?
No. I think at a very topical level, we were much more influenced, at least for me, Catholics came to America much more than Orthodox. So the Byzantine Empire was left out. We just heard about the Great Schism, right? You just hear these dates, like who's the Constantine, right? Then the schism in 1066. Then the fall of Constantinople really kind of coincided with the founding of the New World. I think the fall of Constantinople was 1492 or something like that, right? And then that was the when Columbus sailed to the so-called New World, right? Something like that.
Yeah, and so I mean, Turkey, the Ottoman Empire was was basically the Muslim conquest of the Byzantine Empire. And as you've been to like Hagia Sophia or Santa Sophia in Istanbul, it's an amazing. In fact, when I went there the first time, I didn't know that it actually was a church.
Right.
And it's stunning thing to see. Um, but anyways, we have a very strong imprint of the Byzantine Empire into Russia, but we also have, Russia. The thing was, you talk about actual multicultural, country, right? You have many, many, many different ethnic groups, multiple religions, this and that, but they were harmonious. You know what I mean? So
They still are. It's still super multi-ethnic. Like Shoigu, who's the head of their military, is from kind of an ethnic group somewhere out in central Russia. I forgot the name of it, but you can
but
tell
see,
he doesn't look like kind of like the classic kind of St. Petersburg Russian or something.
yeah, but the thing is, it's not done at gunpoint like our quote unquote diversity. With our
Right, right.
diversity, and the okay, I'll stay on topic, but I mean,
It's all right. No, but I mean, it is a different sensibility. It was always kind of a polyglot culture. I think they always saw themselves as that.
but there was not. I mean, there was a merit based thing, right? There also they had their own land. That's one thing to keep in mind. These are not just hordes, of military age men being led over a border by a wonderful, gentle grandfather figure, that is allowing a nation just to, fall on its own sword, and in fact propelling that to happen, which you can equate that potentially to the United States right now. But it was something where you have all this, multiple groups, but also as one of the things that people don't know is that Russia was one of the most prosperous before the Bolshevik Revolution, was one of the most prosperous countries in the world. Okay, really high standard of living. You could always, in fact, if you want to look at, the sort of maybe just call them Crowleyan socialists. They're Crowleyan socialists. There's Fabian socialists and that Crowley stuff. I mean, they are not antagonistic. In fact, they may, you may know, I'm sure you know more about that, but I'm just presupposing that they certainly could be connected, because that you have the discontented talking about revolution in their manor house. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
And the Cambridge, a lot of times they're homosexuals, da da da. People have dirt on them. They get connected with this, but there was a huge influx of this, but these are people that are not, they're not working class poor. They're at the upper crust, but yet they're helping to foment this discontent. But anyways, we have these various caliphates. I mean, Spain was, a lot of people don't know, has been under Islamic rule, was under Islamic rule longer than it's been a Christian country.
Right. That's
Spain was
right.
captured.
700 years.
Yeah.
It was right around, all these interesting things happened because the Muslims took Constantinople, but then were kicked out of Spain, I think, in the 15th century, right around Ferdinand and Isabella, financing the kind of the ships to the New World. And it all took place. Then the conquest of Mexico was 1516 or 1520 or something like that by Hernan Cortez. So many things happened in the world in such a short period of time then.
Yeah, major things. And again, the lack of most people do not have a historical context, and that's, we'll probably get to that, which is very important, right? You
Right.
lose that context, like when you see that that first slide I showed. Wait, the Russian state in 800 AD, the capital was Kiev, right?
Right.
So that shines a different light on everything that's happening right now, does it not? I think it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can continue.
The fall of Constantinople was 1453, so it was pretty close. So it was a receding culture. It was just a matter of time. Actually, the reason that it actually fell, my understanding, is one of the last crusades, the Catholic crusades went and sacked Constantinople and took all their gold, and so then they were left kind of to defend for themselves without any. They couldn't pay for military costs and stuff like that. Let's go back. There it is. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and one thing we can hit on too, and people really get into this idea of the mud flood. I don't know if you've ever gotten into that.
What's the mud flood? I don't know what that
is. The mud flood, Tartar. This is now there are factual things, like you can see certain types of construction, architecture, technologies that far predate when we think of them. Like there's paintings from the 16th century that show actual rockets, unless these are forgeries or whatever. But there's you look at the architecture around the United States, you can see very advanced things, advanced technologies. Look at the airships, look at Tesla technology, there, and he came from Eastern Europe. So there were these other streams. So basically the mud flood, and I've had people this idea that there was a wipe, that the whole calendar that we have is off by hundreds of years, not thousands of years. And then the Tatars actually were spread all across the world, and they held this high culture and all these secrets of architecture and mathematics and this and that. But anyways, that's I don't necessarily want to get into that. I've had discussions, not necessarily heated arguments about that, but there's a whole element of this knowledge and wisdom, and just we can look like some of these domes, right? And these also can be, you're bringing in, there's stuff that was built. How do you build it? Using special frequency technology. So this stuff does, I think there have been, you can think of like many things where you have huge slabs of stone. How were these moved? We couldn't build this today. How was it done? So anyways, but it's very beautiful, interesting, all these domes, which are, again, these are ways, the building and the architecture is very powerful influence on culture, okay, and also on the spiritual energy of a culture, or the you change when you change the space, and you erase the history, you change how we live in the world, right? You don't have okay, Ohio State, whatever it is, large university, but you see a lot of these older, beautiful buildings being destroyed, putting in all the new stuff, right? Either the faux Las Vegas style classicism or just postmodern freak out, or the towers. Think about modernism, right? Which is really what was the architecture of the Soviet Union, right? These faceless skyscrapers. Any human element is removed. Go to a small town, right? You can go to these small towns in America. You see beautiful urban design. But anyways, I just got a bunch of weird ambient noise. Okay, so
Sorry, I just turned up my mic. That might have been it.
Okay, I just heard cars roll by and stuff.
Okay, well, I live on a busy street.
I thought I was hallucinating.
You never know. Maybe we're under sound assault, man.
Maybe the woodpecker's getting me. But anyways, some of these domes, there are technologies related to these domes, and there's different. You can look at Einstein space-time versus the ether, right? The ether, which is the ionosphere, right? So you have basically a materialization, and then you also have this. There's really a null. There's a nullity. Everything is just nothing has any meaning. Everything is nothingness, right? Everything just comes from this vast, like H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu monster at the heart of the universe, and so that is the basis of the current system that's being imposed or attempted to be imposed on humanity. I don't think it's all the way there, but please chime in where I might.
It feels like it's coming into view. Like there's a definite blueprint. Yeah, that's right. Mongol Empire ruled Russia 250 years.
Yeah,
that's arguably the foundation was because Russia in Moscow paid the Mongols their tribute, and so they were allowed to kind of survive. They didn't resist. Like some of these other civilizations resisted, they're gone. The Mongols wiped out whole civilizations. That's how powerful they were.
You know about the just as a little aside, the bloody white baron? You heard of him?
No, what is it? Tell me that.
Bring him up. He's an interesting character from history. He was a kind of a white Russian, but he was also had some
Roman von Ungern Sternberg.
Yep, that's him. Yep.
He looks like he's got a 1,000-mile stare, like he's been in war.
Yep.
The bloody baron.
So he was trying to, reinstate the.
He was a right Russian trying to fight for the Romanov dynasty or something.
Yeah, but he was also an occultist and connected with connects with Third Reich type stuff and, Shambhala and all that. So,
there's a healthy vein of occultism through Russian history too, leading through Rasputin, maybe even into the president. But yeah, it's definitely there.
So, anyway,
that's an interesting guy. This is interesting. I'll have to do a story on this guy. It looks like they shot him.
Yeah, he got, but it was this interesting.
I haven't pulled it up. There it is. I'm looking at it. I haven't pulled it up to the screen. So there it is on the screen. That's him. That's I don't know what that picture of is him in the back, but he looks like a tough customer.
He's wearing this he's wearing this Mongolian religious stuff. He was into sometimes the Vajrayana Buddhism, but he was also connected with he was known as being very he was a mystic.
Often eccentric and often violent treatment of enemies. From Austria.
Yeah, from Austria, but he identified as a Mongolian.
Wow, interesting.
So he's trying to bring back the Mongolian, the Tatar Empire to control. He thought it would eventually take over Russia and eventually, take rule of the earth, basically. At least that's some of his ravings. So just a little wild, little interesting.
Well, it's interesting because do you know whose blood so goes, is contained in most people's heritage is the Mongols, right? Their genetic
Mm.
legacy. I think most people can be traced back to Genghis Khan, right? Much more so than Charlemagne. You ever heard that?
Well, you ever go to Kazakhstan? Like the most unfriendly. I mean, you go to the airport, like nobody smiles. They're all like the entire country is like direct descendants of Genghis Khan.
Oh wow.
And they're, beautiful women, but really not friendly. I mean, at least I'm sure there's nice people there, but it's like totally different. You feel it too. So yeah, he had like
Wow.
what
Interesting.
thousands of wives.
Yeah, just there wasn't limitless. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
It's interesting too because Lenin, this huge pivotal figure in the war, was a Mongol, was of Mongol blood. Like there's absolutely no question about it. You can see him in some of these pictures. They're obvious. He's obviously a Mongol. Let me see if I can pull this up. He has that very distinctive slitted Mongol eye. I don't know if you can see this here, but you can see it maybe in some of these pictures. They kind of downplayed it, but some of them it's very obvious. He has the double fold. Let me see where did that picture go? Google Images has gone down. Let's see. You can see it kind of here. This portrait. You can see a double. See, the Mongol will have a double fold, very distinctive shape of their eye. It's a double fold, and he had it. But I think they tried to play it down. But he was he was multi-ethnic when it was. Here's maybe a better picture. It's interesting.
and this, I don't know what prominence the mud flood or I just just searched like the mud floods, Tartaria, and ancient civilizations. So there's lots of films on this, and there's people they believe very strongly in this, right? But Tartaria is what? Tartaria is the Mongols, the Tatars, right?
Right.
But the only thing is that the state that we can go to my slide. We can go to the next slide. You can see how big the Mongol Empire was. So that was a big. I mean, that's you know, um,
Yeah. Huge landmass, right? Like just incredible.
yeah, and in fact, even a lot of Europe was de facto controlled. You know, by the Mongol Empire. Um, but
That we would have all Europe would have been controlled if he did. There was like they had all the problem with the Mongol empires. Their warriors were first rate, but they had problems with succession. So once somebody died, then the whole empire stopped, and everybody went back to Mongolia to fight to see who the next Khan was, and that's what saved Europe.
yeah, but so this, and we're obviously skimming through along many, almost 1,000 years, actually about 1,000 years. But this is, there's a lot of these historical things, geohistorical things are, we are encountering them right now. So it's this really narrow snapshot of the present moment, the narrow snapshot of one event to the next event, one news cycle to the next news cycle. Even the asteroid, or not the asteroid. Well, the asteroid. How about the Devil Horn asteroid? You know about that, right?
Tell me about it. Is that what's the
So
devil
that's
horn?
going to be visible during the eclipse.
Okay.
Look it up. It has. So that's it's happening tomorrow, and it's literally a devil horned asteroid that's going to be visible during the eclipse. And
Devil horn. There it is. This
devil
comet heading towards Earth
and it
grows
has
huge horns. Wow.
and it has forget the
Devil
devil
comet.
comet, and that's okay.
That's okay. Don't panic. Don't look up, right? Isn't that the name of the movie? It
But
might be visible during the total solar eclipse.
but it has a different name. It's what I've seen is that they remove the actual name. It's got like Vulcan, some, it's got one of these like occult reference names, and now they're calling it what the Pons Brooks, but it had a different name like 3 days ago. Um, uh,
There it is. Devil Horns Comet explained.
see the name, the Vulcan.
Astronomers aren't entirely sure what's causing the horns, but they think could be due to the comet spewing gas and dust unevenly. That's it. Yeah, you got to stock up on toilet paper, guys. We need another run on toilet paper. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All this like end of the world stuff's a bit rich.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's, but yeah. So that's whatever. But this is where these things are being put. We have this eclipse. We have all these other things. And the rockets being launched. We have the Devil Horn Comet with with another. It has another name, which is unfortunately I don't remember it, and you're not seeing it online. But that is, of course, this is also generating fear, but it also is related to events are unfolding. They are connected with history, but yet they're extracted from history because of a very narrow attentional focus. So
Right.
yeah, so I guess we can go to the next
Go to the
slide
next one.
here.
Yeah.
So the the communists, especially even before and during and after the Cold War, we have a very deep level of infiltration. And so you're familiar with Norman Dodd and his work.
Explain that. It doesn't come to mind.
Okay, so he did work funding you know committee as a special committee for tax exempt foundations. So he found Rockefeller Foundation, everything, right? The way that the entire culture was being manipulated, right, from behind the scenes by the tax exempt foundations. And I think there's probably something like on YouTube. Just throw that on. It was a guy that wrote
There was a book he did, The Hidden Agenda: Merging America into World Government, right?
Yeah, and so this was very just very important. I think we can find the.
This is it right here. I think this is it. Right? The Hidden Agenda. Is this what you're talking about?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's see. Reese Commission. Yeah. There's let's see. So he also came up with the Federal Reserve. I mean, a lot of stuff on the Federal Reserve and all this.
There's a House Select Committee to investigate tax-exempt foundations and comparable organizations from 1952 to 1954. Does that sound right?
Yeah, no, there's a specific book. I mean, there's a guy who wrote a book, which is very well known, and his name is escaping me, on the Federal Reserve. He has an interview about this,
Is
the
it Griffin?
Reese Commission. Griffin, yeah, Griffin interview Reese Commission. So that's a good, if you can find that.
Yeah, B. Carroll Reese. I mean, I had that. Let's see if I can go back here. Oh, communist. G. Edward Griffin, right? G. Edward Griffin. Federal Reserve, a discord, subversion factor. Also science, we the people, world without cancer, creature of Jekyll Island. Is that what we want?
It's just like a video on the Reese Commission on YouTube. He has an interview.
Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I've got it on I've got it on bit
There's
sheets.
an interviews Norman Dodd. This is it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
There it is.
The hidden agenda for world government.
There it is right there. That's Norman Dodd.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. You can play that.
It won't come through. The audio won't come through.
Oh, okay.
I have to get rid of my earbud and do it. I can try. Let's see. Yeah, it won't come through.
Very specific, which was to endeavor by some means of getting the educational world to actually, you might say, teach the subject of economics realistically and move it away from the support of various speculative activities that characterize our country. And I have had that interest. And you know how, as you generate a specific interest, you find yourself gravitating toward persons with similar interests. And ultimately, I found myself kind of the center of the world of dissatisfaction with the direction that this country was headed. And that's on one direction. And this same way, I found myself in contact with many individuals who, on their own, had done a vast amount of studying and research in areas which were part of the problem. And
well, Mr. Dodd, if I may interrupt here for a second, at what point in your career did you become connected with the Reese Committee?
1953.
1953.
Yeah.
And what was that capacity, sir?
That was the capacity of what they call Director of Research for the Reese Committee.
Can you tell us what the Reese Committee was attempting to do?
Yes, I can tell you. It was operating and carrying out instructions embodied in a resolution passed by the House of Representatives, which was to investigate the activities of foundations as to whether or not these activities could justifiably be labeled un-American without, I might say, defining what they meant by un-American. But that was the resolution. And the committee had then the task of selecting a council, and the council in turn had the task of selecting a staff. And he had to have somebody who would direct the work of that staff. And that was what they meant by the Director of Research.
What were some of the details, the specifics that you told the committee at that time?
Well, Mr. Griffin, in that report, I specifically, number one, defined what was, to us, what was meant by the phrase un-American. And we defined that in our way as being a determination to effect changes in the country by unconstitutional means. We have plenty of constitutional procedures, assuming that we wish to effect a change in the form of government or that sort of thing. And therefore, any effort in that direction which did not avail itself of the procedures which were authorized by the Constitution could be justifiably called un-American. That was the start of educating them up to that particular point. The next thing was to educate them as to the effect on the country as a whole of the activities of large endowed foundations over the then past 40 years.
What was that effect, sir?
That effect was to orient our educational system away from support of the principles embodied in the Declaration of Independence and implemented in the Constitution, and educated them over to the idea that the task now was, as a result of the orientation of education, to away from these briefly stated principles and self-evident truths. And that's what had been the effect of the wealth, which constituted the endowments of those foundations that had been in existence over the largest portion of the span of 50 years, and holding them responsible for this change. And what we were able to bring forward was that what we had uncovered was the determination of these large endowed foundations through their trustees to actually get control over the content of American education.
You can pause it right there.
All right, I don't want to play too much of that because
Yeah.
then I'll get a strike or something.
It's also maybe a bit. Well, this is the real deal in terms of stating that. Just to understand that the education system was being subverted as many aspects of our culture. We can look at the Kinsey report, Rockefeller Foundation, right? So I want just to say this is connected, right? This is connected. So do we say left or right, right? Do we say Soviet Union, United States? The whole goal was to fuse the United States into the Soviet Union, as United States being a vassal, and literally an attempt to merge the United States with the Soviet Union through control. And the quote from Dodd, the Reese Committee learned. Well, anyways, the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace were, with tax-exempt dollars, funding leftist propaganda operations aimed at changing America through the brain, not the battlefield. So the battlefield is the mind, right? William Sargent, that book. So anyways, that's go ahead if you want to say it.
Nothing. Just like it's interesting. So Dodd's the foundations, Fabian Socialist, H.G. Wells, and the Long March is Gramsci, right? Like that's Bud Judge's dad, like translated a Gramsci book. For people who don't know Gramsci, was his idea for socialist overthrow, is to take over the institutions, kind of like what's just happened in the last 4 years.
Well, you could look at our world right now, right? This is not abstract. Can you imagine? I mean, people going to jail for not allowing their child to be genitally mutilated?
No.
I mean, but it's
Totally
happening.
Insane. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's happening. That is happening. So it's not abstract, right? We're looking at it. I mean, we're looking at a pretty extreme form of this right now.
Yeah, they had two people who complained about kind of vote issues. I forgot his name offhand, but Bernegger or something like that. They claimed that they hit him with some kind of communist Soviet thing, like you were involved in the judicial process. So complaining about what you think is illegal is now getting you involved in the judicial. That's their interpretation, obviously. But and this whole J6 thing is like over the top.
Well, I mean, you have people.
There's nobody had a gun, and it wasn't an attempted overthrow. They were complaining about it. I mean, that'll get you censored right off of YouTube. But what I just said, actually, I mean, so it's here. Like all these elements are already here. The infiltration is here.
This is the Long March to Institution. So Antonio Gramsci is, was very, ideas of reification. He was, locked in. Mussolini put him in prison, and so Gramsci, his realization actually helped. He was really a progenitor for this, because Okay, actually, Fabian socialists are, you could say, earlier, right, than that. Fabian socialists were a bit different. So
Right.
that's
I think it started in the 19th century, right?
yeah,
Fabian
Fabian socialists. That's sort of
But
a
it's the same, it's an just sorry to interrupt, but it is an overlapping concept. So Fabian socialist is this small thing. So Gramsci and Fabian socialists do overlap because Fabian was the kind of incremental uh, uh, Roman general, right? Who slowly kind of wore down, I think it was Hannibal, and won, right? Through kind of, instead of like these huge wars, he was much more of a kind of take your time, right? So that's the same kind of concept that Gramsci had. Would you agree with that?
yeah. So the idea is the cultural hegemony. Now, so on maybe even on the surface, so you're looking at two different streams. So you're looking at primarily like a British aristocracy,
Yes.
and H.G. Wells, sort of an exemplar of this with the New World Order. But so Gramsci, but his innovation, which was helped found the Frankfurt School, was that you're not going to get there by this direct action. You have to break down the mind. So culture, I mentioned the term hegemonic cultural control, cultural hegemony. So the bourgeoisie. So I think anybody just, and this is, I know a lot of people that, it does, the socialists and all this stuff. I mean, the actual concepts of socialism are applied, right? Um, Socialism itself just becomes polluted in a certain way. Okay. You can have a library is socialistic, right? The fact you have a public library, quote unquote.
Sure.
There's a lot. You have
We have socialistic programs in this country. There's no question. It's not a pure capitalist. Whenever if somebody says the U.S. is its cap, they say it in this obvious term, like, but it's not totally like 100% capitalist. It's a joke.
Well, see, this socialism, it's been, it's been misaligned in a certain way with these very strong movements. So people say, "Oh, it's socialist, it's evil." Well, there's a lot of things that in an actual well functioning, like you look at a small town, somebody's house burns down, everyone comes and helps them. Of course, you don't need a political code to do that. That's quote unquote socialism. It's called a connected, supportive, community, right? So, but all these things have been extracted. So primarily with socialism, but again with communism. So Marxism, as we kind of mentioned in the beginning of this series, is it is eminently tied to the Darwinist materialistic conception, but it takes, and Hegel is one of the most complex philosophers. So I don't know the Hegelian dialectic term. I think David, you start using that a lot. I mean, that's why, you have Hegel's very complex and there's a lot in Hegel. So I don't, unless you know something about Hegel, I hate the term Hegelian
Very
dialectic.
superficially, yeah.
Yeah, but the dialectic.
Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. That's about it.
Yeah. Which is, but the fact is though that this, Marxism was based on, it was a materialistic reimagining, you could say, of, say, Christianity, Day of Judgment. But in this case, the Day of Judgment in the paradise is the workers are all free, because once we destroy everything, it's just going to organically happen by itself. But we don't believe in any God. Everything is just this, random processes thrown in this disordered universe, yet the economic system, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but you're justified to kill a billion people.
150 million in the 20th century. They did a lot worse than the Nazis. Yeah.
Look at China, man. I mean, but what Gramsci had, which actually ultimately proved to be the most successful form, is, so just the Wikipedia thing you got up there. So cultural hegemony. Cultural hegemony is, the cultural hegemony And this is where you see Theodore Adorno, right, from the Frankfurt School. So he will pull apart certain things about popular music, right? This is why I was, very aligned. I thought these guys are great. I like Gramsci. I was way into this guy. I was like, oh, this guy's great. He understands how to change the world for the better. Of course, that's when I was in college, before.
Right. I mean, you don't see the sinister elements that they're trying to bring about this kind of Marxist revolution and the destruction of the old order, right?
But so you
replace it with a different hegemony.
But the thing was that, so let's just I'll be a little bit controversial, but see, like you look at Mussolini, even you look at the way the common people lived in that society was quite good. It wasn't, we get these representations. You look at the Spanish Revolution, the Communist Revolution. You got Ernest Hemingway, going out there getting his one testicle blown off, fighting, and you have George Orwell, talking about. They had these brigades, Abraham Lincoln Brigade, United States. They're burning churches. They're killing priests. They're not there to liberate the people, really. They're there to destroy. Now, they may think they're there to liberate, right? You got Lorca, great Spanish poet, but yet this idea, that, you look at Italy, even you look at pre-war Germany, sorry to say, I mean, what they did for the economy, right? They really made the economy great. Look at Gaddafi, and these are both, you could say, socialist and maybe quote unquote, I mean, fascist. So we have to be careful even to say fascist. That's become the worst term ever. What does fascist mean? To bind together. So this idea that fascism is a merging of the corporate and the the corporations and the state is not. Yes, it's a very tightly controlled society, but in an ideal situation, it's not this evil that's portrayed to be, right? Does that make sense? So some of these things, like Italy, you look at the lifestyle, you look at the things that were going on culturally, you look at how people were actually treated, not as, you look at, Franco, everyone says he's a terrible dictator. Look at what happened in the Spanish Revolution. Look at the communist, they try to have communist revolutions all over the world.
Right.
It wasn't just one country.
It's a global, cause. There's no question.
And they're brutal. I mean, the Spanish Revolution, people are not familiar with the stuff that went on there. In Mexico, I mean, barbaric. You have, you're familiar. I don't know if you're familiar with this stuff, but there was, I think this Catholic, sort of underground militia formed this army and basically took Mexico back. But we just what I want to stress. So hegemony, the hegemon, this control by a dominant ideology, there are factors of truth in this, right? In fact, you can see things that, our culture, but the class consciousness, the fact is that this is, so wait, you can stop right there. Go back a little bit. German student movement is very important also. But what I was saying is that, these words and these things of history, we do not have, we get fragmentary understanding, right? We see something as all evil, right? Or all this or that, right? So, Mussolini, but look at, now this, I'm not, well, it's the truth. So you look at that compared to these other things, what is worse? Now, maybe these are both different polarities, but so the whole point of this communist socialist revolution, which is ostensibly for the liberation of humanity, but what actually happens and what is the fruit, right? By their fruit, you will know them. So look at the really fundamental ideology at the basis is that it's like Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the natural man, right? You go back to this primitive state and suddenly everything is great.
Right. Isn't that what Marx really said in the Communist Manifesto, or one of those Das Kapital, is that man lived in a state of communal peace before civilization, right? So that's what they were trying to get back to, is sharing and all that stuff, which really I don't think is even close to being true, but that's what he wrote. I mean, that was one of the critiques of Marx, is that he was a He's a dilettante anthropologist.
Well, Marx was also, familiar with this. Marx was also, as a young man, it was a Satanist,
Yeah.
and he wrote these poems like "Hymn to Satan." You can look up,
Yeah.
you could look at Marx's poem.
He's also a rabble rouser, a drunkard. He wasn't that.
He was also funded by the Rothschild.
Yeah, funded by the Rothschilds. His dad was a rabbi. He would send him letters like, "What the f is wrong with you?"
but he actually may have been directly related. But so just to understand, so that these, when you look at like, because we have been, we have very distorted frameworks to understand things, right? And you can look at good and evil, right and wrong, but and that's when I mentioned Russia, in a sense we can go in that liminal space, right? We can go between, and there could be good things from certain sides or other sides, but the communist stuff, in some cultures or societies that were considered to be quote unquote fascist or communist were actually much better functioning than what happened afterwards, right? So like a real socialist like Gaddafi was taken out by the left.
Right.
So
it's an amazing point you make there. He was taken out by leftists. Like he was actually delivering, not like the modern left in the United States today. He was actually delivering for his people without really that much of. I don't know if he would have had a socialist label. Do you think that he actually talked about socialism, or was he just a beneficent ruler? I mean, outside from his personal character traits. I mean, he was delivering like you could get a free house, your education was paid for, peaceful society, all that stuff. They had to get rid of him. They cannot allow that stuff to be successful.
Well, he
capitalist,
he was a socialist. The Little Green Book, right? That's his book.
Okay,
you can find online. The Little Green Book. But this is what I'm saying. This is a real socialism, but it has the element of he's ruling the country, right? So they say, it's fascist. So your terminologies, what I mean, you have to parse it out. So but he was the Little Green Book, which is actually a really interesting thing. But Gaddafi, he had really almost no possessions, right? Yeah, he did have his about his Amazon female bodyguards. So he had
I don't know how much of that is propaganda. They always go after, when they waste people, they go after their sex lives.
No,
like
I don't think
Noriega and all that stuff.
I don't know if he had sex with them, but he just had these these female Amazon bodyguards. Maybe that's not true.
I don't know. It might be true. I don't know.
But he lived in a tent. He slept on a mattress on the ground. So he was there for his people, right? So that's where you have the royalty, right? You have this. So in some way it's connected, right? We have, a lot of this has been, when you have a properly, even a functioning monarchy, that's actually takes responsibility for the people, right? They're not there just to fill their own pockets or to promote something. Then you can have quite ideal conditions. How many issues in the world right now are just completely arbitrarily caused by globalist elites that just are putting these agendas for no reason? There's no reason for the Ukraine war at all. I mean, there's reasons but there's no actual real reason. Is a human reason. Almost all the problems in our country, supply chain, benzene in 10% of products. Why are we being poisoned? Why do we have all these things happening, right? Why are we being flooded by invading basically armies? I mean, just one other aside on this point. I saw something recently where it's a Chinese performing arts group, and they were blocked right in Chicago customs by a Chinese border protection agency that said they are Falun Gong, they are subversives. In the United States, in the Chicago airport, they are being detained by an official of the Chinese Communist Party in Chicago. You can look that up. It's recent. So what I'm saying is that's a little odd, right? you have things like this going on. So, anyways, back to the topic. So cultural hegemony. So this, so there's the concept of reification. There's the idea. I mean, ultimately, is that you become, in a certain way, the policeman is in your own mind. Okay, you become coerced and controlled because of the apparatus that's culturally supported or conditioned, but it's existing in your own mental processes, your psyche, your conscience, whatever you want to call it, right? So the policeman is in your own brain. Policeman can be outside as well to reinforce that, but when you have that level of control. So when he's talking about cultural hegemony, but of course, what do we see now? Of course, the ultimate understanding and implementation of the process, and in a certain way, quote unquote, cultural hegemony. If you grow up in a small town, you learn a certain type of value system, you learn to work hard, you learn to be honest in your business dealings, right?
Right.
You get certain type of a value system. Ramsey would call that cultural hegemony. But in fact, these are, you could say, conditioning apparatus, but they create a moral order. And then at a certain point, you realize that, wait, it may be more difficult for me to live this way, but I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to have a much more real life. I'm going to have honor, right? I'm going to live with honor. But if you don't have some of these values implanted, or at least accessed, right? And or reinforced through media, right? So we can go look at like Westerns or something. You have these heroic figures. Look at what we have now in the media, right? Look at something like Wolf of Wall Street. Is that a or Hannibal Lecter? I mean, this is we have lost these role models, right? Lost role models and lost ideals. And not saying this is all good. I'm not just saying that we go back to the past. I mean, there's lots of probably very abusive, disconnected familiar relations, right? But the hegemony that he's talking about is actually foundational structures, right? So just think that it's wrong to steal. It's wrong to beat up Billy and steal his Pokemon card. No, it's okay. Just do whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like if you're a child, and in fact, not only that, I believe, at least people disagree with me, I think there is an innate moral sense that people possess, and some people don't, of course. They're the opposite. Go ahead. I'm kind of riffing on that. But.
I know. I'm just involved in the chat here. Yeah. So this all is relevant to what's going on today. You can see that they called it these institutions have gone rogue or whatever against the people, but you can see the reasoning behind it. What these people are doing is not by mistake, right? They have captured the institutions, and now they're using them to continue their revolution, right? Or their desired change.
Yeah. So what's so if we just go through this, you want to go?
Do you want to go through?
Yeah, just go. Yeah, some of this is important. So we'll go back up a little bit. Behavioral contagion. There's all kinds of stuff in here. You'll see. And so to perceive and combat ruling class cultural hegemony. Oh, can you stop? The working class and the peasant class depend upon the moral and political leadership of their native intelligentsia. So distinction between the intellectual of the bourgeoisie and the intellectual of the working class, imposing the status quo. So we can just go down a little bit. So it's actually so we look at the German student movement. You can start right there. 1967, regarding the politics and society of West Germany, the leader of the German student movement, Rudi Dutsch, applied Gramsci's analysis for cultural hegemony using the phrase, the long march through the institutions, to describe the ideological position necessary to realize the war of position. The war of position, that's very important, right? The war of position, which is the control, right? We had that Dodd talking about the control of these foundations. So so we look at, so we're talking about state controlled, um, state, like we're not, I mean, how much are we controlled by the state? Are we controlled by a composite? So what they're, just think this is a bit of a nuanced point, right? Is that the idea of state control versus what they're calling control. Look, these are the zones of activity, the religious ISA. Okay, this is called ideological state apparatus that must be subverted and destroyed in the long march to the institutions, right? So you see that right there. The religious ISA, the educational ISA, institutional state.
They have to annihilate everything. Like
the
that's
legal.
how scary it is.
What? Look, are we not living in this right now?
Absolutely.
Can you just go up just a little bit? I got
Up
okay.
here?
So yeah, the religious no, just down. I'm sorry, down.
Sorry.
So the religious. So this is again. So what? I'll try to be a little more specific. Is that, when they're talking about state control, we're talking about, family structure, right? So it's not the state apparatus is not necessarily controlling your family. It's not controlling necessarily, the government itself does not create your religion, but there, you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that there's, you have to have some buffering, generally speaking, right? As a human being, unless you're just, law of the jungle, right? Lord of the Flies. That's what they're trying to get back to. So the religious ISA, institutional, the family, the legal, right? Can we see all these things happening right now? Can we see it? You just mentioned that. Look at the current legal cases that are going on.
Oh, it's gone. This whole thing against Trump is right out of like communism. It's crazy. They're just making stuff up. It's totally like undercut and corroded the legal profession. I mean, aside from like, I heard that Fannie Willis like stole her election too. Like there's all kinds of ballot fraud. Like, can you imagine like being harassed by this and then like telling people publicly it's all legit? Like it's embarrassing. Like this is so bad. They undervalued Mar-a-Lago, and it's just total joke. Do you know that was a civil case too? The one that was the one in New York City, that they didn't go through criminal processes. They did a civil case with nobody were in the wrong. There were no, like, it's a total violation of the law because there's no hurt party, right? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, people, I hope they realize that you're in Kafkaesque nightmare situation. Some people like it because they like have learned to hate Trump or whatever, but that's not the issue. It's a much more important issue, which is your whole legal system is going down the tubes and it's run by fools. That should scare the living daylights out of you. A lot of Americans are too freaking stupid to realize the consequences of that, because they're taking his property, then they're going to just take everybody else's property, right? Because the revolution has to continue. So if you like your property rights, yeah, you live in New York, I pity you.
Yeah, and we could go on and on about the stuff like these land grabs, right, to the environmental foundations. But just again, so people that are listening on the radio, just go. So again, this is this is a very well thought out concept. Okay, very well thought out. And Fabian socialists, they are quote unquote not communists, right? They're different, but yet they become aligned, and they're still actually going for the same goal, even though they're coming from different angles. So this is more from the outside, right? The communists are banging on the door. The Fabian socialists are already, lords of the manor. They're elites in their society, and they get enamored with these ideas. Anyways, so again, just go through the ISI, ideological state apparatus. Supposedly it's controlling us. Religious, the clergy, infiltrate the clergy. Look at that.
Look at the clergy with all like the pride flags and all that stuff. They've like lost their religious basis with a new kind of set of doctrines. It's totally anti-Christian. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, the whole thing with the Catholic Church is that they started, after the Kinsey report, they started encouraging and recruiting priests, or certain, infiltrated factors recruited people that they knew, that they would, they sort of set up some of the, that the priest abuse scandal. Some of that was greatly exaggerated as well, but that was set up, right? They allowed people in the clergy. So educational eyesight, that's what he's talking about, but public and private school systems. I mean, look what's going on in our schools. Okay. I mean, we could just take any one of these things: transgender, the family ISA, patriarchal family structure with a father. I mean, think about that. How is a state apparatus, quote unquote, I'm living out on the frontier. How is the state apparatus constructing my patriarchal family? This shows the lie to me of this ideology, just to say, those are quote unquote socialists. Why, if you have an honorable father that's taking care of the household, right? Does not the wife want a father that's going to provide and take care of the children and provide a home and a strong background? Do you have to destroy this institution? Is this an evil? The legal, we just talked about that. Police and legal, court and penal system. Right. Okay. And then, the company unions, right? Company unions, mass communication, print, radio, television, internet, cinema, the cultural ISI,
Right.
literature, the arts, sport, etc.
They facilitated change. Like, they planned it and facilitated this change. And it succeeded. It's really already been overthrown, but just people got probably part of this is lulling everybody into kind of a fugue state where they just don't even fight back about it. They just complain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'll just last quote from this is it, in itself, the political system is an ideological apparatus because citizens' participation involves intellectually accepting the ideological fiction corresponding to a certain reality that the component parts of the political system, as well as the principle of its functioning, are based on the ideology of the freedom and equality of the individual voters and the free choice of the people's representatives by the individuals that make up the people. A lot in there, but go back. So the political system is an ideological apparatus. So it's basically saying that the fiction. So it's what it's saying is that this is postmodernism, right? The fiction that the father, the fiction that the religion, the fiction of a police force that you can trust, the fiction of the Constitution.
Right.
The fiction.
It's all a fiction to them. Wow. Yeah. Their reality is really different. Yeah.
It's a fiction to a quote certain reality. Okay. The functioning based on the ideology of quote freedom and quote equality of the voters and quote free choice of the people. What they're saying is that these ideological fictions, which we would call maybe that of a well-functioning social system or structure, are fictionalizing or the freedom and equality. See, you think you're free if you're under the Constitution. You're not really free. You are under the dominant ideology, right, of the state apparatus. You must be liberated, whether you want to be or not, right? This is the ideology of the long march to the institutions. Like, I like the fact that I was born with gonads. Nope. You are in a fiction because you're actually a woman and you need to get a sex change, because
that's how they can grease 250 million people, because you're an abstraction from the reality of the socialist revolution, right? Like, oh, well, you just got to go because we're making a new reality. It's literally like magic. Like, it's incredible.
Well, I mean, you bring up the transgender thing just because when you have children being genetically modified through hormones and having their surgeries that will never come back. This is destroying their lives, and maybe they're depressed. Maybe they're on Prozac. Maybe they have ADD. Maybe they play video games.
Maybe they'll work through it. Everybody has troubles, you know.
Well, no,
Everybody has problems.
but-
Sometimes they make their way through it. They don't need to have their balls cut off. Right?
but what they're doing though is they're taking someone who is depressed or who is whatever, and maybe they're saying, oh, let's bring you into this group, and your problem is because you have the wrong gender, and so you're going to go get the surgery. This is what is all this stuff is based on, right? Because the ideology, look at those scare quotes: freedom and equality and free choice. What you think your choice is? Oh, you think you have a choice that I can defend my home and I own my house and this is my family, and if you cross my front door, you better not do it, right? Oh no, this is not your house. This belongs to the people. We've decided you're part of the community. You have to leave your home and go to a smart city now, because your freedom and equality, these are all conditioned. So this is actually the basis of, can you see this is systematic basis of everything we're looking at right now? You're right. There's no,
Yes.
And it's not, maybe 5 years ago, man, I'm gonna this touch up my appearance makes me look like some kind of like a zombie mutant. Let me turn it off.
Yeah, you better start looking good because you got 177 live viewers on X so far. So,
Man, I'm gonna turn off. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go
this is it.
raw.
I mean, X is like, as far as live, like, I'm reaching so many more people on X than even YouTube. Like, I think I got 50 on YouTube with more subscribers. So go figure that. We got put on the live on X sidebar, by the way.
Oh, great. Well, so I'll roll this a little bit more. So, so again, the will of the people, I don't want to get too deep, but this is where the conceptual apparatus, right? This is very important to gain some of these understandings, even if they're a bit tricky and nuanced, right? Because, but we can just go through this, go through the other links here. This is actually one of those. No, I guarantee you, if you get a lot of views on this, I guarantee you there'll be stuff removed from this Wikipedia after tonight. But look at these
Probably.
great links.
Look, they even use the term sheeple. God.
Yeah, look at this. Behavioral contagion.
Yeah.
Behavioral contagion. This is very important, right? This is one of the fundamental principles of where you get basically a synchrony or a resonance within a population. If you get a certain number of the population to do a certain behavior, it will create a behavioral contagion. So that we go to Gustave Le Bon,
Right, the
1895.
crowd study of popular mind. That's like one of the most famous books. Yeah.
But behavioral contagion. So de-individuation, the likelihood. So de-individuation is one of the progenitors or one of the grounding factors for behavioral contagion, right? It's a very and can we not witness this, right? And we can also see, even with this eclipse thing, right? This apocalyptic eclipse here in Ohio at 75%. Hope I survive the devil comment. If I'm going down with my eclipse glasses on, or maybe not. I don't care. But can you think of any recent examples of behavioral contagion that maybe are still ongoing?
COVID.
Oh yeah, really?
It's not an invasion. I mean, that's the whole thing, is these guys, like, they have a whole different terms for what they're doing. So they never call themselves liars or deceivers. They're just saying you have a false reality. We need to put in a new reality. Like, they're totally unmoored from like good and evil. Like, it's so strange. And that's why these guys don't stop, because they're just past it. They have ideologically reformatted their minds, and so then it affects everybody else. But yeah, this kind of behavioral contagion, it's all over the place, don't you think? Like the behavioral contagion of Trump, like he's a contagion. Like Trump is literally, I've heard like intellectuals say Trump is like an asteroid coming towards Earth. Like they distorted him out of reality. Like, you think he's that bad? He really didn't do much. He didn't have the capacity to do much because all you freaking communist freaks undercut him for 4 years. But yeah, it's just like, I think the contagion's everywhere, and it's infected society.
Yeah, yeah, and so this has been well studied, right? I mean, well studied, and it's there are so social contagion can occur through threshold models that assume that an individual needs to be convinced by a fraction of their social context above a given threshold to adopt a novel behavior. Let me read that again. Social contagion can occur through threshold models. That means that this is a modeling threshold. So it can occur, right? The one thing is there's not an article. You can create social contagion by undertaking threshold models, right? So that means that within this particular demographic, if we get, you know, this X percentage of a certain person's social context, will they engage in this behavior? Okay. Look at just another example of this. How about all the suicides from like the Netflix show, like young girls committing suicide?
Right. That's social contagion, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So it's the threshold model can occur. No, through the application of threshold modeling. I'm just correcting the Wikipedia because it's like, oh, it just happens by itself. It's like, oh, a flock of, a pigeon just shat upon my head randomly. No, it's like you've modeled this and you're implementing it with end result. Okay. So threshold modeling, I'm changing that assumes that an individual needs to be convinced by a fraction of their social context above a given threshold to adopt a novel behavior. Therefore, the number of exposure will not increase chances of contagion unless the number of sources pass a certain threshold. Okay, so it would let me just break that down a little bit. It means that so you can see, okay, just take, I don't know, give me an example. COVID, I think I don't want to beat the dead horse, the pale horse. Behold the pale horse, right? But it means that
I guess maybe Putin, and it's an invasion of Ukraine, and the world's relying on Ukraine. Maybe these are type of behavioral contagion
but
too.
here's the thing. This is where you have the social aspect, though, right? So what it's saying is that you can get exposed to that idea, by the media. Maybe you're exposed 10,000 times to that idea, but it's saying that your social contacts, a certain threshold of your social circle, of your social environment has to be convinced. Then you will adopt that behavior. So it's not just the exposure to the propaganda, but it's the exposure of those around you. You know what I mean? The exposure of your friend, of your business, your corporation, your job. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So it's people that you're directly in contact with, actual social contacts. So,
Gotcha. Right.
so,
Yeah. Sheila writes, social contagion equals generation trans. Trans didn't even exist like a generation ago. Like I'm 55, so like it's just popped up in really the last 15, 20 years, if that, maybe even sooner.
but it wasn't. I mean, this whole thing that was. It just it's basically since Biden took office, really, when it
Yeah,
really got
really. It's
hardcore.
really that's not recent. I think
Yeah,
you're right.
but it's become dominating. But that's an exact example. That's a behavioral contagion, right? Um, and, and, but behavioral contagion is a form of social contagion. Okay, so we can go. You can go back to that. I just hit these. I know we're coming around.
But yeah, I mean, this is a whole nother show. Like all this communist stuff, all these concepts that they've worked on that the public just didn't understand. I saw this show. There was somewhere on it was like on a MAGA type Trump, but this girl had this huge discovery, and she discovered that Buttigieg's dad translated Gramsci. She couldn't pronounce Gramsci, and they had no idea. It was interesting to watch their interplay because they might have been talking about Swahili because they had no idea. They didn't even have a reference point for who Gramsci was. And so it's like, this guy, Gramsci, he was an Italian. It was really something else that kind of, it's one of those interesting moments where you see these MAGA people don't understand, like, this is all communist stuff. These guys are communists.
Yeah, and I'll just a couple of these other points, which is hopefully I'll have to save this. Focal point game theory. So game theory This has also involved game theory, focal point, attentional focus, consciousness, right? Um,
Thomas Shelley, The Strategy of Conflict. People can often concert their intentions or expectations with others if each knows that the other is trying to do the same in a cooperative situation. So their action would converge on a focal point which has some kind of prominence compared to the environment.
but so let's look at a focal point. I mean, Black Lives Matter, that's a focal point, right? You see that manifesting in riots. So this gets a bit complex, but it's a solution that is not, this is done unconsciously a lot of times. So focal point is that you'll be led to the same place. You could be a MAGA person and led to the same holding pen, right? You can follow a certain thing.
Right.
You end up in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That so it's very.
The existence of focal points can help explain the use of social norms, including traditional gender roles, in order to ensure coordination, and why changing said norms can be difficult. So they this is kind of the way of looking at like gender roles, like how we can change those, how we can make everything change. Now it's normal. It's normal to think that you're transgender. Like my kids, like they had talks about what's your sexuality. You're like preteen, prepubescent, and those ideas were put in their brains. So that social norm has now been established in the other generation, where in my generation, nobody talked to us about that. You were just a man or a woman, and that was it. Maybe there were some outliers or something like that. People knew people might have been not on the heterosexual normativity scale, but now it's like that conversation's a normal conversation. So the whole social norm has been changed. Right?
Well, this focal point, I mean, so this is quite complex, but we're talking about the inner landscape, inner and external. How we, think about your small town. You've got your local businesses, you got your town hall, you've got your police station, you got your church, you've got your school. If you grow for those, and if everything kind of works, unless there's some kind of satanic cult operating in your town, which probably happens now, but it's there physically. The institutions are there, but this is encoded upon you. You get focal points, like we still have focal points, right? Like when this stuff breaks down, you can be reduced to a totally animalistic, society. You end up with cannibals and stuff. Literally, I mean, but when you learn how to manipulate these subtly, you can take divergent groups and institutions, and using this social coordination theory and focal point manipulation, you can really make vast, widespread changes with certain agents operating. Because how do you explain? Look at the massive social changes that have happened right now. Absolutely amazing. And these are things that, like, how can a group of probably 28-year-old idiots who just graduated from teaching college take my child against my will and take them to indoctrination sessions and take them to therapists and start them taking medications and then eventually do genital mutilation surgery that is basically a form of genocide, because that bloodline is being shut off. So my genes can't reproduce. And so in the past, you would go out, I hate to say this, you go out and kill those people. You took my child's life. I'll fight you to the death. Now,
they probably doubled or tripled those children's chance of suicide too.
Oh yeah, look, yeah, but so what I'm saying is that now you can go to jail, and certainly people in England, people even in the United States, right, have been parents going to teachers meetings
for opposing it, right? For opposing it.
How about the guy that got beat up because his daughter was raped by a trans boy?
Right. What about the guy who was complaining? Wasn't there a rape in Virginia and a boy in a woman's bathroom?
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
That's how they changed.
Yeah. The FBI went after the parents. They didn't go after like the school or anything, the school that covered it up, right? Isn't it something like that?
He was speaking at the meeting, and you can see the video footage where the cops are pummeling him.
Oh wow.
He's physically assaulted by the police. I mean, not just like, please leave, sir. No, they have him on the ground, headlock, and you can throw that. Yeah. So that's,
Yeah,
we're
this
looking
person's in Loudoun
at,
County, so that's where it happened. Yeah.
yep. So this is, how do you explain what I'm sharing, or hopefully trying to clarify, is that, how do you explain the police who are supposed to be on the side of the Constitution? Do they really even, care? Why are they beating up this guy? Are these guys transgender? No, I mean, probably they're from, normal backgrounds, but yet they're beating this father up whose daughter was raped, and they're brutally beating him. This is how, right? Focal point. They're coming from one side and they're ending up at the same place. And it's also, so this explains a lot of types of behavior.
Right. Wow. It's really, it's really crazy. It's so crazy out there, It's just off the charts. And it's just a multi-tiered assault, right? Like that's the blueprint, right? Like this is it.
Yeah. So we could go back. I'll just finish the last few of these.
It's the cognitive restructuring, just like the theme of this, right?
Yep. Oh, no, go back to that Wikipedia. There's a couple more.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to get the last few points. You don't have to open.
We're at the hour. 45,
yeah. We can just wrap up on. I'll just go through these theories here. So then we have hegemonic masculinity. Okay, hegemonic masculinity.
Multiple masculinities. I never heard that either. Wow, this is new. This is really rotting my brain. I'm actually kind of in a state of kind of revulsion. This is so sick. People waste their time on this crazy stuff. Conceptually, hegemonic masculinity proposes to explain how and why men maintain dominant social roles over the woman. You're bigger, you're meaner, and other gender identities which are perceived as feminine in a given society.
I'll just read another. Deleted paragraph. Okay. They're probably already editing this stuff as we're opening up this page. This is some good. When you find some actual information on Wikipedia.
Right.
Look, deleted paragraph. They probably just did it. No, I've seen this happen, but let me just read a bit of this quote here. The conceptual beginnings of hegemonic masculinity represented the culturally idealized form of manhood that was socially and hierarchically exclusive and concerned with breadwinning, that was anxiety provoking and differentiated internally and hierarchically, that was brutal and violent, pseudo-natural and tough, psychologically contradictory, and thus crisis prone, economically rich, and socially sustained. So, I mean, look at that.
There's whole fields of studies like this in colleges now. That's what's really scary. Like gender studies, probably they look into this stuff and it just warps their brain.
So how is it idealized form of manhood? Idealized form. So if I want to take care of my wife and I'm earning money, is that a form? But this is so
like it's like that is supposed to be negative, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of your male's role, is to protect and provide. Like it's the standard type of thing.
Yeah, male-dominated workplaces, toxic. So toxic masculinity is different from hegemonic masculinity, right? So when you have a hegemon, the hegemon must be destroyed. Toxins can be cured, can be remedied, but a hegemon must be annihilated. Right. So it's just so these terms, they're also valence, and these are not, look at our world today. These are not abstract. We are living in the actualization. Even 4 or 5 years ago, it wouldn't be as intense as what it is now.
Yes, there's absolutely no doubt about it. Again, some says in the chat, consider that they can't define what a woman is without a woman biologically. And then they punish you. So the stick comes in after the kind of application of disreality, which is their view of fake reality, right? So you're in a kind of psychological, ideological state with these people where it's almost like talking to a Scientologist or something like that. It's the same kind of thing where they're not even going to think anything. Like, your reality is baloney. I'm just trying to institute something because you're a liar. And then you say, is a man a woman? They can just respond straight face and say, I don't know. Right? Like,
Well,
that's
yeah,
why these are, I mean, it's beyond education. It has to do with this ideology and the view that sociology is, like you said earlier, it's the paramount of man. There's no external God. It's all materialism. They have to be materialistic to have this kind of crap put into other people's brains, right?
yeah, but also understand that within this complex structure, it's also it's a and you can have multiple arrays of this deployment, right? So this can happen in, it could be the manager, some, working class blue collar dude somehow becomes a vector of this, the manager of this Safeway, because he has to implement the policies. He's following orders. The cop that beats up the guy in Loudon, Virginia, he's following orders, but he doesn't, but they're saying that your freedom, you think your freedom and equality, oh, this is a construct. You don't even know you're actually in prison. We're going to liberate you. You don't even know who you are. They've stripped away everything, right? You don't even have, when I say, no, I have my right to my land. I'm a man on my land. You can't cross that threshold. No, your freedom, this is your delusion.
Right.
This
It's
is a delusion.
you're delusional. That you have property rights. Even property rights are delusional, right?
See that? Look at that.
That's
That sentence right there. The quote freedom, quote, and quote
Yeah.
equality, and quote free choice, and
Yeah.
quote make up will of the people.
The fiction, I think the fiction corresponding to a certain reality is that they believe that you're living in a fiction. That people who believe in property rights or the Bill of Rights or individual rights against the state are in some kind of like netherworld, right? That's really what it means.
And now, like hegemony again, hegemony is like this absolute control, right? Conquest of the mind, right? So
Right.
you're not just a toxic male, you're a hegemonic male.
Right. Like it's
You
that bad. Like
you
it's
are
like,
the archetype of evil, and you can be destroyed because you think that I have to take care of my wife and I have to earn money and I have to provide a safe home for my children. So now I'm a hegemon. That's I mean, there's I'm not making it up. It's
right.
right there in front of you.
It's right there. It's as clear as day. Like that's the way you got to talk to these people. Like you're talking to a psychic case. Like, I mean, how many genders are there, Bob? Do you see a hegemonic masculinity here? Do you sense that? Is that presence here? Are you presencing that? Like it's almost that crazy. Like things are so demented right now in the world. I mean, you can see why mental illness is on the rise. It's because of stuff like this. Like they don't even know like why people are treating people. They've been freaking perverted by commie ideology, which just murdered more people than Hitler. Like literally, they killed 1/3 of the population of Cambodia, and that guy Pol Pot never said he was sorry. He was doing the ideology. That was what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. So we just finish up real quick. I'll just go through
Yeah.
the last of these.
Yeah, and tell people where they can see your stuff.
Oh,
Your
yeah,
website,
please.
by the way, looks great. I just saw this. I don't know who did it, but yeah, it looks
Yeah, did a good
super,
job. I've been
yeah.
doing I'm basically, I've been doing a lot of I just finished mastered. I did I have this full production studio. I just did a vinyl master. We got the vinyl print. So I did that for a client. I have lots of stuff for sale. I've got a store.
You had a live show in New York City too, right?
Yep. They played in New York City. I've been playing actually, I'm getting gigs. So I'm not like some superstar, I don't have a tour bus, but I've been getting a lot of guitar gigs or whatever. So I'll be playing with the Stone City Band, which is the former members of Rick James Band, which is like a pretty high. I'm surprised they called it
guitar or sitar.
Guitar, man. I'm doing a lot of. Yeah, no,
Nice.
this is like this. They got the full background singers, horns. We play out in New York, California, whatever. So I'll be doing that, but it's just a gig. But please, I've got some books. I've got stuff there. And so please, or shoot me an email and like, the store, and please help support me. I'm here as a,
We covered 2 hours so fast. We only got through like 4 slides.
Oh,
Like we'll probably do another show, but it's always interesting. The comments are always positive. I don't usually have as many live listeners, but I think I'm sitting at 205 and live on X. So thanks for listening, guys. And you can check out everything. You can I'll put a link to Hans's website so you can see his varied interests and talents and writings. And he definitely knows a lot about this stuff, but it's always good to riff on like these topics because they're happening in real world, just like you've repeated often. Is like this is like what we're seeing now. It all led up, the cybernetics, biofield energetics, changing the culture is leading up to what's going on right now, right? This cognitive restructure. They're trying to cognitively restructure all of us in the worst way possible, in my opinion. So this theme is very salient, very important, and timely. So anything you'd like to finish with, Hans?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, by going through some of these things, you start to get, more clarity. You can see, and some of the things, they're a little bit difficult to understand. It's not just, but this stuff is not just surface, right? You need to understand these practices and principles.
Are you German and Chinese? Sandra says
I'm
you're the
certainly
most
not
handsome.
Chinese.
Okay,
I'm
maybe you have a
German.
little Mongol in your
No, I think it's whatever reason the camera Chinese. Maybe I'm doing too much
Anyway,
meditation.
thank you all for listening, and Hans, thanks so much for your time.
Okay,
It's always a
but
pleasure.
yeah, just say that right now a lot of the stuff we have our higher minds, higher awareness, the practice and presence to witness to God or the universe is very important right now. And so every small gesture in your life is important. And I think that we should be without any fear, because ultimately this is it's a completely illusory false paradigm, but there's so many dimensions of this hall of mirrors that we need to cut down. And we need to also understand the structuring, because these are not just cognitive structures, they're now material structures, right, in our institutions. So the long march through the institutions is by and large successful in a way that you can even imagine. Could you imagine in 1980, 1970, 2010 this happening? No, but it's here now. So I'll leave it with that.
Well said. And thanks so much for your time. Hans Utter, hansutter.com, HANSUTTER.com. Part 3 in the bag. There'll probably be other parts to this. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, stay there.